Mother of monsters.
Da, 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 da.
You can't watch Alien Earth without thinking of Daenerys from A Game of Thrones. And I will tell you why. Dany and Wendy are so alike, it's scary. I'm surprised we haven't caught this sooner, y'all. Dany and Wendy are both super women. They control and pet monsters. They have a strong moral compass. They go on a journey for self-discovery. And they both have a sense of killer style while doing it all.
That's true. We got a couple of revolutionary babes, if you will, monster babes, and they come from humble beginnings and they are revolutionaries. So there's a lot to like, a lot to compare. There's some important similarities, but also some really striking differences. And I think that analyzing Dany's story, as we did the last couple days, gives us some insight on Wendy's future path and some of the struggles that she might face. So let's talk about Daenerys, mother of dragons, and Wendy, who's basically becoming some kind of alien queen.
Let's start with the similarities between Wendy and Dany.
So they both control monsters, as we said, xenomorphs and the dragons. And one of the things that I noticed is they're both serpent-like reptilian monsters. In some of the alien movies, certain people do just straight up call them serpents. They are very serpent-like. They sneak up, they're silent. The striking mouth is like a striking serpent. And they do use deception. Now that you've watched the first couple of alien movies, you can see they're smart. That scene where they're crawling, the sensor shows they're getting closer. It turns out they're in the ceiling. Oh, did you enjoy that?
I did. I was a lot more excited. I don't know why I just said I did. I really liked it. I was freaked out. The Alien franchise is a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. Like David, the other David, not you, David. I stan David. I stan him. Problematic, but I do.
Miki watched Prometheus, and she hadn't watched any alien movies before the TV show, and she just slammed the first two and Prometheus and Covenant. And yeah, the first thing she said, I was rooting for David. Alien movies really do a good job of, they give you the monster horror up front, but behind that are a lot of deeper themes that I thought the TV show did a good job of exploring. Yeah, like I was saying, not only are they both controlling and using these serpent-like monsters potentially as their own army or their own allies, their muscle, if you will, these monsters cause a lot of fear and awe. So just like the dragons, the aliens, they're beautiful and terrible. They are completely foreign. The dragons are very alien to everything that's around them. Just overall, the whole Mother of Dragons thing is similar to the alien queen role. Yeah, actually, Miki lovingly
Made Wendy a royal title just like Dany.
Let's see what you got.
Wendy, Marcy of House Hermit, first of her kind, queen of the hybrids and synths, lady of Earth, protector of the lost boys, destroyer of prodigy, and mother of aliens.
That sounds like the Wendy I know, the ex Marcy.
Wendy is also part of an elite group like Dany is. There's only 6 hybrids, 5 existing now. Rip Isaac.
Rip Isaac, yes.
And Dany's a Targaryen, specifically a dragon rider, the only one right now. In the book, the only one right now. In the show, there were 2.
Yeah, there might be 1 or 2 more lurking somewhere, but yeah, she's the first dragon rider anyone's seen in like 150 years. So yeah, they're definitely a very elite group with special powers. And these powers are innate, aren't they?
Dany just knows to put the eggs on the fire pyre. She just puts the eggs on the fire and they hatch. And she walks into it. That's the wild thing. She's like, yeah, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go sit there. And then the same thing, how she just gets on her dragon. She's unsure. She's just like, well, I guess I'm just going to go try to touch my dragon, get up on him.
Yeah, that's been one of the most striking things about House of the Dragon is to see House Targaryen in this era where they've got this cultural systematic control versus Dany, who's doing it in the wild with almost no knowledge of what she's supposed to do. She's heard a couple things about the Valerians and Targaryens when she was a kid, but yeah, she's doing it on instinct.
So Wendy just starts hacking. Like, she doesn't even know she can. She just gets her little fingers to a screen and she's already using different cameras to see what Joe's up to, looking around, controlling the cages in the lab. It's natural to her.
So I really think this tells us something about the architecture of the hybrids. It seems like she has this brain and then an AI that's coupled to it. So she just thinks about what she wants to do. And on some level, she has an AI that's figuring out how to hack the systems in real time and doing it. Like, she's not thinking through the hacking process. She has an AI that does it. A little bit like Neo. It's this sort of just instinctive genius savant, the one, however you want to say it. Like, they have this touch. You've got the touch.
They both have language ability. They both can communicate with people or things who either don't communicate or who are just not understood. With Dany, we have the Dothraki. A lot of people don't choose to go learn Dothraki or even understand them as a people.
Dany choosing to learn Dothraki is contrasted with Viserys, her brother, who chooses not to integrate himself at all in the culture, and he ultimately fails, where she succeeds. So it's a great point.
She knows High Valyrian, and you've also mentioned psychic dreams and glass candles.
Yeah, it's another way that she has extra communication that other people don't. It allows her to communicate with her dragons, potentially ancestor spirits and things like that. And I think that's sort of similar to Wendy being able to talk to the aliens and potentially having hidden knowledge that she can access. Like, we don't know what's in her AI brain, if her programming is unique, why she can hear these frequencies that the other hybrids can't. So yeah, there is something unique about both of them, and a lot of it does come down to communication, which ties into their empathy, and that's kind of our next point. They have humble beginnings, and that informs their empathy for others. Yeah, and we see like empathy is at the center of the very first scene with Marcy before the operation and the scorpion in the jar, and Kirsch is trying to see if she can feel empathy for something that is totally alien.
It's true. So if we look at Dany, she's an orphan, sold into marriage, has lived in poverty, really. Marcy had a terminal illness. She becomes an orphan because she's sold to a corporation. So very similar. They have no say in who they are, where they live, anything, no autonomy at all. And because they were left behind, they don't want to leave anyone else behind.
There's this no one left behind ethos that we see with both of them. Like, Wendy's not leaving the island without all the hybrids. And you get the feeling she wouldn't leave without Joe either. We see the same thing with Dany. She could buy some of the Unsullied, but she doesn't. She negotiates to get all of them, even the boys in training, and then she shuts down the practice.
I mean, even with women and children, her advisors, unfortunately, the Dothraki treat women a certain way when they conquer things. And Dany's like, hey, that's not right. And her advisors are like, well, this is how things are. And she's like, I don't care. We're changing this up.
Yeah, it's kind of the most striking thing about Dany's empathy is that she puts it into action. And this brings us to our next section. Wendy and Dany, these are revolutionary characters. They will insert themselves, they will intervene to save people or to right wrongs.
And they both see through different races and species. I mean, no one's off the table. They will fight for especially those who can't fight for themselves. They have courage, they have their moral clarity, and this is surprising because they're the first of their kind. Dany, the first in a long time to be a dragon rider. Wendy, the first hybrid. So, no one's on their team really, but they still go out of their way to go help others.
Yeah, they use this unique position to galvanize their leadership. They sort of step up to the role. Like, oh, I'm the only one with dragons. Dany spends a lot of time thinking about what that means. How will it go when I invade West? We're talking about the book character, I guess, mostly. But yeah, she ruminates a lot. What have I birthed into the world? Are they monsters? Am I a monster? What's going to happen, etc., etc. With Marcy, Wendy rather, her story is just beginning. We don't know as much of it yet, so we'll have to see how that empathy holds up as it's tested. But right now, they're both have a lot of leadership qualities besides the empathy. Like, they're courageous. Again, they'll intervene to help people, so we can see why people follow them. But let's talk about the differences, because there are some differences, Miki.
With Dany, there's a lot of precedence with having dragons. Valyria built a 5,000-year empire on the back of dragon power. Dragons were essential to their culture. It is everything. It controls everything, how they interact with each other, their hierarchy within their culture. But with Wendy, there's no precedent for dealing with aliens, controlling the xenomorph. I mean, she's just kind of making it up as she goes.
Yeah, that's right. It is a unique thing because she's bringing it back and no one's seen it in 150 years. And she doesn't have access to all this Targaryen knowledge of how to control dragons, so she is intuitively feeling it out. However, the world has seen it before. People know what to expect from Targaryen dragon lords, Valyrian dragon lords. We saw it on the show when she invaded with the dragons. Like, plenty of people knew they could consult the histories, and on House of the Dragon, we see it fully realized as culture of the dragon keepers. And there's nothing like that. Like, no one's ever communicated with aliens in this way. There is a little bit with cloned Ripley in Alien 4, but that's nothing like what Wendy is doing, really. Wendy is using the aliens potentially as her army, and that's not something we've seen. No one has any idea how that's going to go in universe. Like, no one's seen it. People get used to the dragons in Westeros at a certain point. So like, yeah, the Targaryens have them under control. You can see when Wendy's talking to the alien, Joe's there and Nibs is there. They're unsure, and I was even raising the question, how do we know the aliens will always know who's on Wendy's team? Like, if Wendy's incapacitated, will the alien just eat Joe?
I know. And do they realize that she is a hybrid and not a human like Joe is? But in Prometheus and Covenant, David was trying so hard, one, to make more xenomorphs, but two, to understand them. And in Covenant, it like broke my heart when he finally gets a xenomorph to like stand up and not be aggressive, and he's like trying to communicate with him, and he's just wide-eyed, so excited. And then dude, I forget his name, comes in and just like kills the xenomorph, and David's like, what did you do? I was finally able to talk to it.
And so the thing about controlling xenomorphs is that David wasn't controlling them in the way that Wendy is. Now, he would have liked to figure out how to communicate with them. Maybe he would have figured out it eventually, but his goal is chaos. Wendy's goal isn't necessarily to just breed xenomorphs. She has different goals, which we'll talk about. So it's a lot more unprecedented. I think we've made the point. But yeah, we'll have to see what Wendy does with all this.
Another difference with Dany and Wendy is their relationship with humanity as a whole. I mean, Dany sees herself as human, but also as a former slave, as a refugee. She's fighting to change the world for them. She wants to break the wheel. Wendy is becoming alienated with humanity. Alienated?
See what you did there. See what you did there.
It is debatable how much Marcy went into her, because Wendy isn't sure either. Wendy doesn't know if she is human, if she's a hybrid. She's figuring that out for herself. Whereas Dany, she knows exactly who she is.
Yeah, so there's these two related ideas that we're trying to put our finger on. Their relationship with humanity and their own internal identity, and one informs the other. But the big striking difference is that Wendy's looking at humanity and judging it because of how she's been treated and because of what she's seen, all these experiments and things, and the way that kids and humans and species are treated by Prodigy. And she's basically divorcing herself from humanity. She's looking at her own grave and going, I don't really have to be a person anymore. She potentially is a lot more terrifying than Dany because she has no compunction to preserve human life, potentially. And on the show, obviously, we're not going to go into this whole thing, but the sort of dark turn that Dany took, where she's roasting civilians at the end, a lot of us book readers had a problem with it because it didn't really go with the character that had been established, who was so very concerned about the lives of innocent people.
Dany constantly questions herself and her actions and is like, but is this going to hurt my people? Is this going to hurt other people? Like, she could just go to Slaver's Bay, burn everything down. She didn't have to stay there. She didn't have to think about the slaves there, but she did, and that's because of her relationship with humanity. She's a human. She wants to protect other humans.
One of probably the most violent thing that Dany does, she crucifies 100 and some slave masters who had previously crucified children on the way to their city as a warning to Dany. And so as recompense, she crucified the same number of slave masters. Now, nobody's pro-crucifixion here. Point is, in a medieval world that Dany lives in, this is harsh justice and given out to the very worst people imaginable. She still felt bad about it. The next day, she's like, did I do the right thing? I don't know. Without going there, I guess, Miki, the whole point is, Dany is concerned about collateral damage. Wendy potentially is not.
Wendy's feelings about injustice override the caution she should take with correcting what's going on.
We see Wendy sicking her xenomorphs on Joe's teammates, basically, with no sorrow, no hesitation, just cold-blooded determination.
No, and she responds with yelling at Joe, like, what did you do? Like, the injustice was because they pushed Nibs too hard. Not, oh, we killed a lot of people there. It was just about Nibs. So there is that separation between hybrids versus humans.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why Wendy is a little more she is unmoored where Dany is moored. Dany has a much stronger sense of identity. She comes from House Targaryen. She knows about her home in Westeros. She's got an identity in the Dothraki Khalasar. She's got an identity as the mother of dragons. Wendy doesn't know who she is. She's like, I'm not a kid. I'm not an adult. I'm not Marcy. I'm not Wendy. I'm not a human. I'm not a robot. 100%. I can be whatever I want. So it's just a lot more open ended. They are both shaping their future. Dany is evolving, but it's from like a base of knowing who she is. Whereas Wendy, she's been robbed of that basically.
She was a child. And while Dany was a child being thrown into the situation, like you said, there's a foundation of who she is, and Dany's just grown more confident. And Wendy, thus far in the timeline, hasn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, Wendy doesn't even have like the stories about her brother Rhaegar to compare herself to, which is something Dany does in her toughest moment. She thinks about, what would Rhaegar do? My brother was brave when he did this. There is Joe, but that Joe's not a precedent for what Wendy is doing in the way that Rhaegar is. So, another huge difference, Miki, that goes along with this is their sense of ownership of the place where they are. Dany's in Slaver's Bay. Then she comes to Westeros on the TV show. She's obviously going to do that in the books. Like we said, she is taking responsibility and ownership for the people that live there. She could have left Slaver's Bay, but she's literally trying to sort out, the former slave economy and recompense for the masters and the victims and all this stuff. She's doing this hard work because she cares. Wendy might burn Treasure Island down to the ground like Mora wanted to do by the end of this thing. She's not attached to it at all.
No, she's not attached to it. She's not attached to her creators why would you? It's Cavalier, but still she's not attached to her reality. She's just like, "Hey, I'm kind of upset about this." To put in the nicest way, "I'm upset about this. Let me do this." But yeah, she could literally kill everyone and leave the next day. Whereas Dany won't do that. That is not in her character. There's not a world where she would do that.
No, and Dany has this idea of like, oh, I've got to get back to Westeros. That's my home. There's people that need me. Wendy has no home. Think about that scene where Joe is talking to Kirsch, and Kirsch is like, really? You think she's gonna go home with you and be a family? She could explore space for 1,000,000 years and invent faster than light travel. We were thinking about that as a reality check for Joe, but think about how cold that is for Wendy too. The idea of being a family, which is what a kid, an 11-year-old terminally ill kid that hasn't had a normal childhood would crave. And she can't have that. She doesn't have anywhere to go back to. There's nothing. And you've got a cool theory that builds on this that we're going to get to. In fact, we're getting to it right now because it is time to talk about what Dany's story might say about Wendy's future. Let's talk about, before we get to your theory, we'll talk about their purpose because that'll sort of set it up. Dany is caught between these two purposes that we've talked about. She has these dragons. They're very powerful. She senses that her destiny is important because of this, but she's got these two things. One is she could use her dragons to save the world, fight the White Walkers. But she also wants to rule Westeros, sit the Iron Throne, restore the Targaryen dynasty. These two things are basically in conflict. On the show, she succeeds at one. She defeats the Walkers, but essentially fails at ruling Westeros and becomes a tyrant. And in the books, it may be a matter of letting go of the dream of the throne to beat the others.
You can't have it all.
Dany could not. And it was specifically set up as the one thing is a distraction from the other, right? So let's talk about Wendy's goals. What is she trying to do?
Right now, it seems like she just wants to destroy Prodigy and Boy Cavalier. Naturally, she's been leading and protecting the hybrids and the xenomorphs. And I think her goal is to find a place for the hybrids and xenomorphs. And she knows it could not be in this world. I think she wants to take them home. I think home for them is their home planet, but I can see her wanting that for them.
Yeah, and based on everything that we've been talking about, you can see how well this is set up. She doesn't have a home to go back to. These aliens didn't ask to come here, as she has already said. She's already a mouthpiece for them. They didn't ask for this. So yeah, the idea of her taking them home could make a lot of sense. She can communicate with them, and like we've talked about, she might be on the way to becoming some sort of alien mech goddess or something crazy like that, which would fit into all that. And Dany is kind of taking people home too. She's collecting up refugees that don't have a home and trying to create a home for them in Westeros. That's a very fulfilling idea, isn't it? like just as a way to wrap up those kind of characters with a fulfilling thing. It's like, okay, well, Wendy just beating, burning down Cavalier and his company. That's cool. It's cool that Dany wants to beat the White Walkers and stuff. But it's like protecting people and saving people, giving the homeless a home. That stuff really hits home for us, doesn't it?
And they literally hit home.
Yeah, it's just a primal, satisfying need. Everyone needs a home, feel a sense of belonging. So, yeah, that's definitely a good thing to write about if you're a writer. Like, people relate to that. And, what's interesting is that we just talked about this potential conflict that Dany faced between like vengeance and destruction and conquest versus protection. This might crop up for Wendy too. Is like, is she more determined taking down Cavalier, maybe Wayland Dutani and all these corporations, or is she thinking more about the future of the hybrids and giving them a place, the future of the aliens, where are they going to exist? So I do think those things she may have to choose at some point.
I think so too. In in my opinion, I think she's more for finding a home and backing up the hybrids and aliens. She's obviously very upset with Cavalier and Prodigy, but I haven't seen her want to break the wheel like Dany has. Where Dany is like, "Hey, this is a system that I need to destroy." Wendy seems to be like, "Oh, I need to help these specific people."
Mostly we have seen Wendy use the aliens to kill people who are sort of in the way of what she's trying to do. I will say that in the last episode, we began to see a little more of Wendy intentionally destabilizing the island with her camera hacking and her elevator tricks and things. At that point, she's moving into the territory of like, I'm going to take this place down, take down the power structure, and then rule. So we'll have to see what ruling means to these hybrids. Like, it hasn't moved into straight revenge gratification. She's not stringing up Cavalier by his ankles and having the alien pull his organs out or something. They just locked him up in the cage so they could scold him a little bit.
She took great pride in having the xenomorph come and scare Cavalier.
It's unnerving. The characters in the story are more than unnerved by seeing Wendy control the Xenos. But yeah, watching it feels unstable. We already talked about this. Could Wendy lose control of one of the xenomorphs? Nobody knows how it works or whatever. Specifically, if you think about Dany in Game of Thrones, the Night King stole one of her dragons. So could we see something like that? We've talked before about the possibility that Kirsch or one of the other smart androids might be able to figure out how to talk to xenomorphs.
Or even iBug, Teocellus. What if he gets up in the mix? Because he just he just moved in to Arthur. So iBug now has another body capable of speech. So I can see him going for another round with the xenomorphs. iBug could come and take control of one.
Yeah, the iBug agenda is completely wide open. We don't know, but certainly that is so yeah, that's one thing to keep an eye on. Not only Wendy's balancing vengeance and justice and all these things, but also just her control of the xenomorphs. What if they turn against her people? What if someone else controls them? What if a queen shows up, either born or maybe the show in the future moves to space and we run into the alien queen? Now we have a question of loyalty. Who are the aliens loyal to? So there you go, guys. I hope you have enjoyed our comparison of
badass babes.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the mothers of monsters. Compelling, powerful. They inspire awe, fear, worship in some, loathing in others, and they're very compelling characters. So it's been a lot of fun to compare them.
And this is our first crossover episode. We're stepping into a fantasy genre a little bit. One little toe. See, guys, this isn't just going to be Alien Earth. We're going to cover other stuff.
We are.
It's just a little taste.
You'll be surprised by some of the stuff we're gonna whip out and cover and talk about. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will have at least one more Alien Earth video coming soon. It'll be about Cavalier and ADHD because we both have a touch of the ADHD. You've got the touch.